most privileged Pakistani society
anywhere in the world. And that's why I'm here, hoping that this evening you will break all records in giving us money. Thank you. So I think I look forward to your questions for the next 15-20 minutes before we do the fundraising, before you open your hearts and wallets. When am I going to be the Prime Minister of Pakistan? The answer is, Inshallah, very soon. And let's face it, there is not much competition because the president happens to be the biggest criminal of the country. So, look, let me just say, I played 5 World Cups. I was captain in 3 of them. Never did I go to any World Cup and announce beforehand that we were going to win it, except the last one. So I have fought 2 elections. In both elections, I was pretty honest about what our performances were going to be. I'm too honest, in fact, because in the first election I said we might not even get 1 seat, and we didn't. This coming election, in front of all of you, I'm making this prediction. Like I did before the World Cup, that we'll not win the elections, we'll sweep the elections. And why? And let me tell you why. Because 70% of Pakistanis are under the age of 30. The young youth of Pakistan, not just the youth, everyone, but especially the young, they know they want to change. They know that things cannot go on as they are. Pakistan cannot go on as it is. It's no longer a vibrant state. To survive, we have to change. And to change, we have to have 2 things. Rule of law. We have to have rule of law. No society in the history of mankind has ever prospered without rule of law. And secondly, we have to have economic justice. We can't have a taxation system where the poor subsidize the rich. But in Pakistan, 80% of taxes are given by the common man through indirect taxes, which means inflation, which means the prices rising, which means the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. In the US, it is a capitalist society. The top 1% in the US give 33% of the tax. In a capitalist society, the top 6% give 73% of the tax. In Pakistan, 80% of the taxes come from the poor people through indirect taxes. The rich don't pay taxes. One of our opposition leaders, who happens to have assets of $3 billion, paid a grand sum of 5,000 rupees as tax. I won't tell you who he was. You all know who he was. So therefore, when the rich don't pay taxes, unfortunately, the poor people have to pay taxes through high prices. And that is the second big problem we face. So we have to, through rule of law, fight corruption, and through economic justice, have an equitable taxation system where the rich subsidize the poor. Well, the question, how are we building a team? Remember, I am a team builder. I have relied on teams. No one can succeed without a team. And today, Tehreek-e-Insaf has the best team in Pakistan. Why? Well done. You don't know any of the team members, but it is the best team because it has 2 qualities which no other team, no other political party members have. Number 1,
they have an ideology, a belief system. Having spent 14 years in opposition, going through, and by the way, opposition in Pakistan is not opposition in US. You don't know what opposition in Pakistan is like. It's not just that your bank balance is at risk, your life is at risk. So therefore, when you go through 14 years of opposition, you are left with a team that has a belief system. It's not with you because they think they're going to come into power. So number one, a team with ideology, and number two, with integrity. That's why when the earthquake came, Tehreek-e-Insaf did disproportionately more work than its size. Even in this, in the floods, the party quickly mobilized to start working because Tehreek-e-Insaf has people who have a different ideology and a mindset. And so the two things which are needed by a team, ideology and integrity, is what Tehreek-e-Insaf has. And that's all that's needed. You can hire professionals. Pakistan has the best brains. Sadly, most of them have been pushed out of the country, brain drained like you are. And so when you have access to good minds, you can build a Shaukat Khan Cancer Hospital. If you go to the Middle East, and I've seen 2 or 3 of cancer hospitals, one in Saudi Arabia, one in Dubai. There's hardly any local people there. They're all expatriates. In Pakistan, you can have any quality institution because you have access to brilliant minds. We have Shaukat Khanum, which I'm very proud to say just did a cancer symposium as I left Pakistan. Last year, there were 40 research papers read in the cancer symposium. This year, there were 160. So you can have a quality cancer hospital, a specialized cancer hospital, which is you hardly find in the third world countries. And secondly, the Namal University, which you just saw a glimpse, is the first private sector university in the rural areas. So the vast 70% of rural population has no access to quality education. And everyone said that it could not be done. Here we have, in one of the wildest parts of Pakistan, which is where I come from, my ancestral home, Miawali, 30 miles from Waziristan, where Al-Qaeda is supposed to be hiding. I said supposed to be, we don't know whether it is or not. So anyway, it's quite close to the most, what would you call the outbacks, and yet we have quality teachers and professors coming to work there. So all you have to do is give the work environment. You have to create an institutionalized Pakistan, create a system of meritocracy, and we can build any quality institution. And that's where the hope of Pakistan is. That the moment we have rule of law, we can change the country very quickly because we have access to very good minds. The question is, how do we win elections if we don't have strong candidates? So there are 2 ways to contest elections in Pakistan. There are 2 types of elections. One is candidate-based elections, which is power politics in Pakistan. And the other is elections through a movement, which is what happened in 1970. When I was a boy, I remember Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's movement in Pakistan. It was not candidate-based. It was an idea-based movement. And we saw the biggest candidates being wiped out by unknown people. Tehreek-e-Insaf cannot win through power politics. It can only come into power through a movement. And that movement has already begun. The movement for justice has already begun. Where in the world have you seen thousands of people come behind a Chief Justice and have him restored 3 times? Nowhere would you have seen the scenes you saw in Pakistan. Lawyers, middle classes, civil society, all rallying behind a Chief Justice. So in Pakistan, the independent television media has transformed the country. The level of political awareness in Pakistan is unprecedented. If you, as I've traveled all over the country, in the remotest parts of the country, people understand the issues. Women have been completely politicized in Pakistan. Because sitting in homes, on the television, the most watched programs are not soap operas. They are current affair programs, which some of them are like soap operas, of course. So, current issues there's a hunger for current issues, understanding the solutions to the problems our society faces. And so Pakistan is going through a tremendous change. And there is a saying that the trouble with intellectuals is that they miss the passion of the day. Because at the moment it's not reflected in the newspapers. But underneath there are strong currents, movement for change. And you will see it reflected in my prediction in the next election. You know, in every district of Pakistan, we have clean candidates. Every district. So as we speak, Tehreek-e-Insaf is building a database of clean politicians. We have to present Pakistan with an alternative. What Tehreek-e-Insaf cannot do, as we made a mistake in the by-elections, we cannot have a candidate that does not go with our image. And so the moment that happens, we made a mistake in one of the elections and we took a real beating. But out of the 6 by-elections we contested, in 4 we came second. Yes?
Right.
What are my views on the US-Pakistan?
Can we give that to you?
My vision for the US-Pakistan policy, foreign policy, or our relations. Look, when there is only one superpower in town, you have to have good relations with them. But good relations mean that each country must protect its own interests. This war on terror is a disaster for people of Pakistan and for people of the United States. This war on terror cannot be won militarily. For 6 years, I have been saying the same thing because I know more about that region, the tribal areas of Pakistan where all the fighting is going on. I'm the only politician who has been to all the 7 tribal agencies. And I made presentations here into the think tanks. I've been saying this in Pakistan, that this is a quagmire. This war will go on and on. In my opinion, Obama has made the biggest mistake by giving in to the generals. The generals always want more troops. The generals have only battlefield tactics in mind. A statesman should have a bigger goal. And I'm afraid he's made a mistake because this war does not have a military solution. In the tribal areas of Pakistan, when Pakistan Army went in 2004, we had no militant Taliban in Pakistan. We had no suicide attacks in Pakistan. We had terrorism, but it was sectarian terrorism. But what we have right now, we have 30 different Taliban groups operating in the country. The country is going under. I was called Taliban Khan for saying all this. But I was very amused reading the WikiLeaks, where the American ambassador, the former ambassador to Pakistan, Ann Patterson, saying exactly the same thing what I've been saying for 6 years. According to her, Pakistan is getting destabilized. And according to her, the military action are counterproductive. And according to her, this policy is not going to achieve its aim. In other words, all it is doing is it's radicalizing a population. Pakistan is getting radicalized. And the biggest danger, and let me tell you right now, and the Pakistani community here should know this, that the biggest danger does not come from the mountains of Pakistan and Afghanistan. The biggest danger in the West comes from radicalized Muslims living in Western countries like Faisal Shahzad. The 7/7 bombers were not from the mountains of Pakistan. If you look at all the people who attempted terrorist attacks in the Western countries, do not come from there. No Pashtun has ever been involved in international terrorism. But the longer this war goes on, the more there is a danger that someone like Faisal Shahzad would end up succeeding. And then what happens? Because if I read this Obama's War, and in that, General Jones warned Asad Zardari that if Faisal Shahzad had succeeded, there were 150 targets in Pakistan that would have been bombed by the US. Now what? There are 180 million people who are already going, because of this war, there's some 40,000 casualties in Pakistan. There were 500 bomb blasts last year in Pakistan. There are already over 300 suicide bombings this year. The country has lost over about $40 billion. The economy has lost that sort of money. Cricket teams don't tour Pakistan, forget about a foreign investor. So, if after all these sacrifices, we are told that we could have still been bombed, I mean, where are we? How vulnerable is the country? So I think that this is, it's very unfortunate that, and as I read this Obama's War, I read there was no input from Pakistan. Pakistan is the main affected party, should have come up with the biggest input in this. They should have been telling the Americans, because we have more knowledge about that region than anyone. But there was no input, because all the leadership is interested is in give me more. All they want is dollars. And dollars, these dollars are not helping the people of the country. They are only helping a tiny elite. So in my opinion, we need a change of strategy. And the $200 billion which are being spent annually by the US in this war on terror could be spent on in giving employment to the people here. It's not going to bring any results. Yeah.
Imran Bhai, thank you for being here first and foremost. And what Shaukat Khanum has done for the world and for South Asia is remarkable, so thank you for that. I have a question. I can only speak for myself, Imran Bhai, but I have an affinity for our motherland, and Pakistan is very dear to me. But we live in this country and we live abroad. We may visit often, but our vote may not count. If you were to come into office in 2013, which inshallah you will, Tariq Insaf,
in 2030, there might not be much of a Pakistan left, the way it's going right now.
One can only hope.
It'll happen next year.
My question is, for us folks living here, can you somehow tell us that there's hope for an absentee ballot for us people living in this country that still have an affinity for the motherland to make a difference in the vote for people like yourself? Because otherwise, people can do the circuit in this country and we can donate money, but if our voices are not heard, where are our dollars going and where are our voices going if we're not affecting the root cause in Pakistan? So my question is, can you somehow give us hope that there's an absentee ballot coming in Pakistan?
Well, Tariq Insaf has already gone to the High Court
to have an independent election commission to ensure that elections are contested on the latest ID cards made by Nadra, so that there cannot be any rigging on the polling day, because most of the rigging is done through these the old ID cards which can be replicated. So you have multiple votes, people have multiple votes, and so these fraudulent votes would be wiped out the moment we go on to the Nadra cards, which are the latest ID cards. And third thing, we have gone to the Election Commission to ensure that the overseas Pakistanis are given a vote.
Question?
Okay, 3 more questions, I'm told. Because we've forgotten the floods. Go on.
May I humbly suggest that we not talk about politics tonight because we are here for a let's get the question back.
But even for floods, that right now they're talking that we are very impressed that you lead our country towards better.
This is very good, but this is important. So may I suggest to everyone, so please, let's focus back on the floods. We are here for a purpose tonight, and we need to focus on that purpose. So please, if I may request.
Yep. And why don't you ask the question?
So can you give us some examples of what your organization has done over the past year or so regarding the floods in Pakistan?
Since July, you mean?
Yes.
Well, actually, this is why I didn't talk too much about it, because all of it was, we specifically had that CD that would tell you everything. Number 1 was relief. Number 2 was seed distribution. And at the moment, we have adopted villages. So we are, as I said, we're trying to give a total, holistic and integrated development plan for the villages.
I had a question.
Ji.
This flood, a lot of this flood came due to glacial melting. Next year, if God forbid they come again, and they probably will, maybe hopefully lesser scale, do you have like more of a warning system or more plans? Because if it comes once, it's going to keep on happening again.
You know, the flood didn't come because of the glaciers.
A lot of it did.
The flood came because of unprecedented rainfall in a very short space of time in the catchment area of the River Indus. And so, you know, I mean, I don't think you can cater for that. You just pray to the Almighty that it doesn't come again. There is a long-term picture of global warming, which is specifically affecting our part of the world, and specifically the Sachin Glacier is being affected by the war going on, the little conflict going on the glacier, and that really India and Pakistan had to sit together and work, because it's going to affect both the countries, because those glaciers, the second biggest glacier in the world, the Sachin Glacier, is melting at a very fast rate. But that's not because of global warming, that's because of the military action or the activity that's going on the glacier. 2 questions.
I'm just wondering if you comment on the effect that international relief agencies are having in Pakistan, specifically for flooding.
You see, I wish I could. There's no coordinated effort about the floods. We don't really know what's going on. And the international agencies are involved in different areas. It's only when we go into specific areas we know whatever NGO is doing what work. But overall, in my opinion, no one expected the government to cope with this huge tragedy. But what we expected the government was that it should have given us leadership, that there should have been a map of Pakistan, of the flood-affected areas, and the government should have said, look, these are so many villages affected, people come forward and adopt a village each. NGOs should have come forward. And that was the best way. When I went into the flood-affected areas, it was exactly the same situation as when the earthquake happened in Pakistan. Everyone ended up in 2 or 3 places which were accessible. But the places that were not accessible, people had nothing, were starving. And with the accessible places had after a while enough food for people to start selling the food. So this is again what happened in the flood areas, that along the road where people could get to, you had plenty of relief goods, but you went a few miles further up and away from the road, and there were people
hadn't eaten for days. So unfortunately, I can't answer the question
because we really should have been updated about what was going on, which areas were affected, where the government wanted the NGOs to help, what the government could do, what we could do, but unfortunately it's not the case there.
I think the question is maybe not related directly to the flood, but is impacted by it. I think the biggest problem facing Pakistan right now is, like you said, 70% of our population is under 30. But the biggest problem is employment. And the common person is not really worried about Chief Justice getting into office or whatever. He's worried more about where am I going to feed my family tonight or tomorrow. So how would you, and the problem is further exaggerated because of the flood. So how do you solve that problem, or when your government comes into office, how do you solve that problem?
You know, the biggest problem in Pakistan today is inflation. Everything has gone up by 100% in a year and a half. It is affecting, you cannot imagine the impact of inflation in the country. And what the flood has done is it has further aggravated the situation, specifically food inflation. And this is what is causing poverty, it's causing lawlessness. All the towns near the flood-hit areas, the crime has just skyrocketed because people just have nothing. There's no, they've lost all their livelihood because of the floods. And secondly, in the flood-hit areas, there's total deprivation. So overall, leave the floods aside. In Pakistan, for the country to move ahead, number one, you need rule of law, because that's what brings in investment. The classic case of Singapore, that Singapore's investment, Singapore's success lay in a prime minister being honest, and that prime minister then having rule of law, the best clean government in the whole area, attracting all the investment, and we saw Singapore prosper in front of us. The per capita of Singapore went in the mid-60s was something like $800. Today is $32,500. And it's basically because of rule of law. Very clean government. And if you look at the world, the Transparency International, the charts they print, you look at the most prosperous countries, they are always the best government and the cleanest government. And you look at the third world, the poorest countries, it's not because of lack of resources. It's because of corruption, which comes from lack of good governance. So in Pakistan, the key is governance. And the biggest asset of Pakistan are people like you, overseas Pakistanis. The growth rate in China was fueled by overseas Chinese. Similarly, in India, the growth rate has been fueled by overseas Indian. Overseas Pakistanis cannot participate in Pakistan's growth rate because of there being no rule of law. So they end up buying plots, and even on those plots, after a while, they find, when they go away for a year or two, they find that someone has occupied their land. So, I mean, if you can't even invest in a plot, how are you going to build factories or investment? Last question.
Can you talk about your Adopt a Village, Adopt a Family program?
Asad, will you please put up on the screen, the costings of the family, if you want to. We have costed all what it costs to, adopt a family, adopt a house, and so on. So we'll just put that up for you.
Separation of mosque and state. What are your thoughts on separating religion from the?
Who do we write the text to, and where do we send it?
Imran Khan Foundation, which is a registered charity in the US.
Is there an text?
Huh?
Well, we collect the checks here.
They'll do.
We're going to collect the checks here.
Yeah,
ImranKhanFoundation.org.
Yeah.